Are you searching for the perfect love? You can't purchase it, you perfect love. Don't be searching for the perfect love, unless the lane you searching for someone inside yourself.
Welcome back to the Women in Hip Hop Wednesdays podcast. I am your host, your music midwife, the music midwife, okay? And your nerdy hip hop homegirl, Coco Peila. I'm an MC, a singer, a record producer, a songwriter, a cultural organizer, and the MC is what qualifies me to take you on this journey. Last week, we went behind the scenes of Altars for Our Inner Children, the first of a two-part listening party series that I've been bringing to y'all in collaboration with Creative Wildfire, which is organizations Movement Generation, New Economy Coalition, Art Co-op, and Climate Justice Alliance. And it is a powerful event for survivors and to address the intersectionality between relationship justice, addressing sexual violence, sexual assault, child sexual abuse, domestic violence, and how these are systemic issues. These are not the fault of individual survivors. And even if we zoom out, they're not even solely the onus isn't just solely on the perpetrators of this violence. We've been actually, in one way or another, talking about this throughout season 2 of the Women in Hip Hop Wednesdays podcast, because in a way, this is the silent why behind why I have been doing what I've been doing. My work centers around Black women and girls liberation through hip hop, as an MC and all those things that I mentioned. And as a survivor myself, through the course of, starting to roll out and release Confessions of a Black Feminist Rapper Part 2, trigger warning, my forthcoming album that drops in December, and the mixtape, cassette tape. Q, you hand me one of them tapes from the box. I gotta show y'all. Y'all gonna see it again in a little bit, but I just wanna show y'all. Thank you, Q. Y'all just give a standing ovation to Q at your house, wherever you at. You feel me? You at your desk in the cubicle right now. Just hop up real quick and give Q some love, because he be holding me down. Okay, so we'll talk more about this later, but this I just released in April. And it has 8 out of the full track list that's going to be on the album. And it is a cassette. It's a real cassette tape. And, when I released this, we did a listening party, and that was the first Altars for Our Inner Children. And I hadn't released it just yet. I had talked about it. And, when I released it, I realized that, in one way or another, I kind of been addressing and talking about these issues for my whole career, but it took me a long time of deep spiritual work and healing, because for me, I can do the intellectualizing. I can read the self-help books. I can read the psychology books and begin to put words to and be affirmed through understanding these issues and how they happen, and understanding that it wasn't my fault. And then I can also do the emotional work and the somatic work of actually getting to cry and wail and grieve and tremble and sweat and scream and stomp sometimes, right? And just release the trauma from my body. Some of y'all are probably familiar with that book, Our Body Holds the Score. And those things are really important. All of them are key. And also for me, I found that, sexual abuse, child sexual abuse, sexual violence, sexual assault, domestic violence is also there's a spiritual violation that happens. And so there's also healing to be done there. And for me and my spiritual practice, ancestral healing and being connected with my ancestors and being in communication with them and supporting the process of healing what they weren't able to do in their lifetimes is also a piece of it. And to know that some of these are intergenerational traumas that have come from big systemic oppressions and traumas. So I'm saying all that to say, this is what Altars for Our Inner Children really is about. And y'all got to go behind the scenes. And just because, not everyone identifies as a survivor. We've talked about this. We'll probably talk about it again. But I do believe that we are all survivors. And I feel like that's why these abuses and violations and oppressions are so rampant on the interpersonal level. When we talk about intimate partner violence, when we talk about Black femicides, and the alarming rate at which Black women are killed by either their romantic intimate partner, someone who wants to be their romantic intimate partner, family members, quote unquote friends. It starts to make sense when you zoom out and look at it as a systemic issue. And also when you zoom out as we've talked about in past episodes, and address and look at how violence and rape and sexual violence has been used as a tool of oppression in wars, in colonization, in slavery, and, different institutions, unfortunately, in the institution of marriage, and in basically the socialization of men and women, girls and boys. Unfortunately, these things are actually part of what have created what we now call culturally have come to understand as masculinity and femininity. And I don't know everything about that, but I know my lived experience. I know what I've listened to and heard from my loved ones. And I also have, learned a little bit about world history and the history of our peoples. And it makes sense that these have been massive assaults on our humanity that have spanned hundreds and thousands of years. It makes sense then that after all these wars and all of these atrocities, including the institution of slavery, that we would all have been traumatized, that our ancestors would have all been traumatized, and that we would all then be survivors. If we're standing now, right, it means we have survived. Big shout out to Destiny's Child. I'm not trying to be funny. I love that song, Survivor. So I say this to say, when we talk about last episode, Altars for Our Inner Children, can you heal from SA, DV, CSA, these events, my music, this next album, this mixtape, let me put it real close to the camera. Camera 1, camera 2. Whether or not you identify as a survivor, I believe that when we stand up and begin interrogating our lives and the society around us and history and the systems of oppression, we do get a chance to stand in solidarity with those who identify as survivors or who have had acute experiences with sexual violence, sexual assault, rape, child sexual abuse, domestic violence, intimate partner violence. And we don't have to pretend like we've been through the same things, or you don't have to pretend like you've been through the same things I've been through, or you, but I can still stand in solidarity with you, and I can still begin to interrogate my own socialization and exposure in my lifetime and intergenerationally, because that's what's gonna, as we heal, that's what's gonna allow us to think more flexibly and become more aware, and instead of being unaware or in denial or unable to process and look at and acknowledge how massive and how pervasive these oppressions and their symptoms, the manifestations that we see in our communities, in our cultures, and be able to disrupt it and interrupt it when we see it happening, because otherwise then we become accomplices to the oppression. So the event itself, Altars for Our Inner Children, is supposed to be a brave space for survivors to come and create medicine, and also for us to fight back against fascism, you know, and fight against oppression, fight against the separation, the isolation that we feel that's being manufactured, mass manufactured by these corporations and shady ass, you know, politicians and wannabe dictators. But to create, this is why art is such a threat. This is why artists are such a threat. You know, before we started filming, Q and I were talking about a particular artist and how that artist was like systematically targeted and undermined and attacked because they built an empire and had so much influence. And, you know, a lot of people who have studied revolutions and periods of like great moments in history where there's been a rise in fascism or dictatorship, the artists are often the first to be targeted, and they're also often the ones to be divided and between those who are speaking on the times and documenting the times and speaking out against what's happening, and those who are being used as puppets and commissioned to influence folks to believe that, you know, the agenda of the fascist administrations or racist administrations or institutions, or we can go on and list them, sexist, oppressive. There's always a group of artists who have things dangled in front of them, whether that be a gold passport or getting people in their family or circle out of prison or whatever, a certain dollar number. Artists have always been manipulated and used to influence the people to buy into oppressive regimes, administrations, propaganda, so on and so forth. And so we are very, very powerful, huge threat to the systems of oppression. And that's why getting together and creating music, which I consider to be sonic altars, and creating these beautiful altars for our inner children, actual physical altars with pictures of our young ones, and setting intentions to protect them, setting intentions to heal them, giving them what we were not able to give ourselves when we were young and we didn't have what we need. It's like such powerful, powerful medicine. So this week, we are talking about, this episode is called Who She Thinks She Is. Oop. I'm her, by the way. Let me make sure I look at this other camera, just in case you were wondering. I'm her. And I wanted to talk specifically about women's liberation and hip hop and women in hip hop and internalized sexism, and why women in hip hop are such a powerful force for liberation, particularly Black women and girls. And I wrote some notes when I was preparing. So if you see me looking down, it's just to make sure, because y'all know my mind will just like continue growing branches and branches and branches. And I don't want to get too carried away. I want to make sure that I communicate what it was that I set forth to talk about today. One of the most powerful things about being a woman in hip hop as an MC is that it is an act of direct disruption and resistance to sexism and male domination, to white supremacy, to anti-Black racism, particularly as a Black woman in hip hop. Because when a Black woman or girl grabs the mic, it flies in the face of all of these oppressions that she's experiencing. And Black women, Black people are not a monolith. We are not a monolith. And we sit and stand at many intersections of oppressions depending on our identities and what groups we belong to and how we were raised. But for sure, as a Black woman who was once a Black girl, I do stand at the intersection of anti-Black racism and sexism and male domination, and I have a distinct experience. Y'all see this box right here? This box right here? What's up, y'all? There are only 33 cassette tapes left. What cassette tapes, you ask? Well, I'm so glad that you asked. These are Confessions of a Black Feminist Rapper, Part 2, Trigger Warning, mixtapes. Yes, the album actually drops in December, but in the meantime and between time, I wanted y'all to get a little picture, to hear it, to hear the concepts, to hear the sounds that are gonna be on the album. So there are 8 tracks from my forthcoming album on this cassette tape. Yes, it's a real cassette tape, an old school cassette tape. And each cassette tape comes with a Walkman and a handwritten note from me. This is actually one that's about to go out. I'm about to ship it tomorrow. And literally it comes, I bubble wrap it. I'm nice with it, okay? It comes with a cassette tape and a handwritten note for me. There are 33 left out of 50. Expect them to sell out. Do not play. The songs are dope, the lyricism is dope, the content is dope. And when you snatch one of these limited edition cassette mixtapes, you also get a ticket to my next event, Altars for Our Inner Children, which I'm throwing in partnership with Creative Wildfire, which is organizations, Movement Generation, Art Co-op, New Economy Coalition, and Climate Justice Alliance. I'm super juiced about this because this is a relationship justice project, and they're sharing funding with me so that now, in addition to you have the different ticket levels, but there's also a pay what you can option for survivors who don't have the means to either pay for the ticket at all or pay the full price. Everyone is welcome. These resources, this community, this space should be available to folks no matter what their situation is at the moment. So big shout out to Creative Wildfire. Thank you so much for this. At this event, I'm gonna be sharing a new song that I've been working on, also in partnership with Creative Wildfire, about relationship justice, about the intersections between what we see in intimate partner violence, sexual assault, sexual violence, violence against women and girls, child sexual abuse, domestic violence, sexual exploitation, the connections between that and the rise in fascism, the wars happening, the armed conflicts happening throughout the world, and why it's so important that we believe survivors, that we take what we are saying seriously, and we start really connecting the dots and drawing the lines between the systems of oppression and these symptoms of oppression, and who is getting targeted by these systems and why. And so I'm so juiced to be throwing this event again. If you want to know more about it, I actually already did a video episode called Altars for Our Inner Children, where you can learn more about how it went last time. This time we're going to be sharing that song. DJ KK47 will be in the mix. Of course, if you grab a cassette mixtape, you'll get a ticket, and you can also get general admission tickets. The way that I teach my workshops is really dope because you can do the expressive arts version and create your physical altar, or you can write a song or do a journal entry. And so I'm really excited about this party and getting to facilitate this songwriting altar making workshop for survivors and their allies on the 7th of June at 2 p.m. right here in New York City at the university. Of course, just as last time, you'll be able to join online from anywhere in the world if you'd like to, or if you just, can't make it in that day because of what's going on with your body or whatever the case may be. So come join us on June 7th at 2 p.m. at the university. Make sure you snatch your shit up ASAP, because I'm telling you, there are 33 today, and I bet you tomorrow it's going to be 32, and so on and so forth. So snatch it up at cocopeila.com/cassette. CASSETTE. Okay, I love y'all, for real, for real. And so grabbing the mic flies in the face of that oppression, the oppressions that say that, when a Black woman or girl grabs the mic, it flies in the face of the narrative that those oppressions have promoted that say it's her job to shrink. It's her job to support, comfort, stand in the background in silence, averting her eyes, as the help. We think back to the institution of slavery and those Black African heritage folks who worked for free, unpaid labor in the homes of plantation owners, and how even you can see it in early movies and cinema where they would have Black folks on set, but not as like full human beings, as like, the maid or the cook, the cleaner, and the ways that we've had to shrink ourselves to fit what made white folks feel powerful and not threatened by us, safe, and superior. And so she disrupts the oppression when she grabs the mic, because it says, I am significant. What I have to say is significant. I got something to say. What I think is significant enough that I'm going to say it out loud, and I'm going to command your attention. I'm going to command your respect. I'm going to expect that you pay attention to me. I've written down my thoughts, my perspectives, my experiences, my story. And I believe that I am the main character in my story, right? This is a thing that I think is so powerful. I also think it's why for a long time we were taught to play down women in hip hop, why there was a lot of propaganda and I don't know if I would say propaganda, but I would say people trivializing our experiences and trivializing our power and our skill, right? Saying like, oh, you're good for a girl, or, where are all the women at? There's not really that many women, but she's the one woman who could really rap like that. I think it's all a part of trivializing our experiences and kind of the ways that us being fly, brilliant, witty, creative, powerful is a big threat to the oppressions. When a Black woman or girl grabs the mic, it says, I'm the main character, and it's my turn to share. It's my turn to speak, and it's your turn to listen. And me and the other Black African heritage women, and that You may be a Black African heritage woman yourself, but we, white folks, non-Black people of the global majority, indigenous folks, if you've been exposed to Western media and culture, even if it's not your home culture, you've been exposed to white supremacist, anti-Black, sexist, male dominant, Western white thinking. I probably said Western white like 5 times. And so many of us have been exposed to and also have been socialized and brainwashed to believe that Black women and girls were created to be your servant, your support, your cheerleader, your best friend, sidekick, supporting actress, right? Wait staff, your help, your night nurse, wet nurse, mama, right? Like someone who's here to support you and to be a physical, walking, talking, living, breathing resource to be extracted from. And here's the deal. Black women and girls, we are the center of our lives. I am the center of my life. I am the main character. I'm the protagonist. I'm her, right? We are the center of our worlds. We are the center of our universe. We are the main character in our stories. And we deserve to exist. We deserve to express ourselves, right? We deserve to be seen and heard. We are worthy of living a life that pleases us first and foremost, and that serves our calling, our divine calling, our divine offering that's supposed to be given to this planet and its people. And also not just out of service. I believe in service. My life has been organized around service, but there have been toxic aspects of that because it's been out of balance because of the white supremacy, the anti-Black racism, the sexism and male domination, the sexual exploitation, that idea of being in service for women and girls, and especially Black women and girls, because of this history of, the transatlantic slave trade. These were African people, right? These were not slaves that were being transported. When we say slave, we dehumanize these human beings who were being human trafficked from Africa. But Black women are interesting and significant enough to be the protagonists in our own stories. And I come from a long line of MCs, women in hip hop, Black women in hip hop, who grabbed the mic, who grabbed a pen and paper to say to say whatever they wanted to say, because they believed that they had something to say. And hip hop is one of the most powerful tools for liberation and community building, connection, and the communication of time sensitive, important, and accurate information. So when we disrupt, interrupt, and resist oppression, there's always a backlash. And we get it from people in the world, in our community, our family members, friends, frenemies, from the greater society and the institutions, because disruption threatens the system, right? And it also threatens how folks are playing small in their own lives, or ways that they've given into those socialized roles, and the ways that they have abandoned themselves, which is painful and uncomfortable to look at. And so it's hard to look at a woman, especially a Black woman or girl, stepping into her power and saying, no, I'm not your support staff. I'm her. I'm the center of my universe, and I have something very important that first and foremost pleases the divine and then pleases me, and I get to offer and shine this light, and therefore everyone gets to bask in it and absorb the vitamin D and grow and be fertilized, and the ecosystem continues, not as a form of self-sacrifice and self-abandonment, but as a form of alignment, right? And self-actualization. And folks lash out and attack women and girls, Black women and girls, all women and girls, but we're talking specifically about Black women and girls, and try to pull us down and criticize us when we disrupt that status quo of shrinking and being small and being supportive and dismissing and trivializing ourselves. And, there's oppression. That is oppression that comes in from the outside of folks who are not Black women and girls. And then there's the internalized oppression of Black women and girls around us and other women, right, who are not Black, who see us rejecting and rebuking the oppression and standing in the truth of our goodness and our worthiness and our divinity. And that's the internalized oppression. And of course, we have been targeted by that oppression, so we internalize it and we carry the internalized oppression. And some of us choose to put it, point it out at other people because it's painful when it comes in. So we see other Black women and girls and who she thinks she is. Oh, well, she's this, she's that. Criticize, nitpick, right? And then others of us point it towards ourselves, and it shows up as self-doubt, self-sabotage, playing small, shrinking, hiding, not feeling worthy, self-abandonment, right? We abandon ourselves, what we need, our boundaries, our dreams, our desires, in order to please others. And that's not an individual failure. It's not a personal failure. It's systemic. And oftentimes the other part of sexism for us is that we then get blamed, right? We get blamed for people not being pleased with us, but we also get blamed for any ways that we're not able to stand in our power and truth, right? When it's a systemic thing. And I'm sharing this because a lot of y'all who tune in face this, whether or not you're a woman in hip hop. And also because I'm about to do something big. I'm already doing some pretty big and amazing, innovative things. And I've seen some of it pop up. Yes, lyrics, and concepts in music and songs of bigger artists, but also folks replicating the business model that I'm creating and different ideas that I've had. And I'm choosing to do this out in the open because I want y'all to see not the perfect polished version, but I want y'all to see me fall flat on my face. I want you to see the L's that I take so that when you see the W's, when you see me shining, when you see me win a Grammy, when you see me collaborating with this artist, it doesn't feel like this out of nowhere magical thing. And this is gonna be a returning segment. This is not the only Who She Thinks She Is we gonna do, but this is the first one. And I really wanna challenge y'all in a good way to do this with me, to find the places in your life where you are playing small, okay? I want you to think to yourself, where have I abandoned myself? Where have I abandoned my dreams? Where have I given up on something and decided I'm not worthy, or it's too late, or what if people attack me for it, right? I think that for the longest time, even literally up until I would even say like a couple months ago, I really was telling myself that being small was saving me from being criticized and attacked on a large scale. I really thought that I was protecting myself by half-assing it or by not embracing my brilliance and my beauty and my significance and my powerful ideas and my calling, here in hip hop. And I had some amazing experiences last year, and was like really honored to get to collaborate with different folks, to perform at different places. And it was miserable. It was miserable for me, because the entire time I was having these opportunities, I was having major panic attacks about worrying like that I was going to show up to the venue and the person who invited me, who was overseeing all the events, was going to tell their personal assistant to come tell me they no longer wanted me there, or they were going to realize I just wasn't good enough and I was a hot mess. And I started thinking to myself, there was one of these experiences where I was like, girl, you've always like dreamed of collaborating with Beyonce, writing songs with her. I'm an incredible songwriting coach and songwriter and record producer. And I've always like said to people like, okay, I'm gonna open for Beyonce one day. And I was thinking like, dang, when you get that opportunity, if you don't heal all of this like internalized depression, all of this negative self-talk, these limiting beliefs, this self-abandonment, self-sabotage, it's going to be absolutely miserable, because all you're going to be doing is freaking out, feeling like, oh, I wonder am I not good enough? Maybe I'm going to get excluded and kicked out and rejected and blah, 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 blah. And so I say all this to say, I am doing big things, and I'm about to do some real big things, and I want y'all to come with me, not as fans, not as onlookers, but as comrades, as folks stepping out into the center of our lives from an empowered, healing place. And in that process of healing and facing down our fears together. And I want y'all to know, I'm not the type of person who is gonna project like a perfect, superior, spotless, polished exterior. It's just not my strength. My strength is just in being honest and vulnerable and real. And so I'm gonna fuck up. I'm gonna make mistakes. I've already made so many mistakes in building my business, in collaborations with other artists and collaborations with other, professionals, in my personal life, in my romantic relationships, in my family relationships. So when I stand up here and I talk about these issues of intergenerational trauma, systemic oppression, internalized oppression, navigating the music industry, navigating the world, the entrepreneurial world as a Black woman, business owner, independent artist, hip hop artist, woman in hip hop. I'm speaking from lived experience, and I'm also speaking from a place of learning and being in conversation, right? Being in the cipher. Hip hop is a conversation. So what the fuck is you saying? And I am saying today in the cipher, I challenge you to think through all of the ways that you may have self-abandoned, self-sabotaged, given up on yourself, gotten defeated or discouraged. And I challenge you today to just pick one. You ain't got to do it all today. Pick one part of yourself, one part of your journey, one part of your calling, one place where you've been shrinking. And I want you to choose to take that fight up again with me and be willing to fail and try and learn and grow out in the open. Before I sign off, I want you to know, I wrote it down. It's in my notes somewhere, but when I honestly look at myself as an MC, I feel like I'm operating at maybe like 15% of like my full potential as an MC, if I'm honest with myself. And I'm a badass. As a singer, I feel like I'm operating at maybe 5% of my full capacity and potential. You know, as a businesswoman, I feel like I'm operating at, I don't know, like 40%, 25 to 40%, depending on the day, right? As a record producer, 10% maybe. As a songwriter, I don't know. I feel like I'm clean. Like maybe like 55%, something like that, 60%. But I say this to you to say, like, I've got a long ways to go and to grow. And I got some blocks and challenges that I'm staring down and healing through and praying through and being blessed and supported through rising to the occasion. And so I want y'all to do that. And if you want to write me, you could write me. But it can also just be something that stays in your journal or stays in a jar where you turn over prayers to your higher power, to God, to the Most High, to the Goddess, whoever it is that you honor as that great spirit. But I do want you to take it up with me, okay? I love y'all, for real, for real.